What's going on, guys? It is Sean GPT here. Today we are going to be taking a look at my Black Friday P365 build that I put together using parts that I found on sale or secondhand. The basis of this build is to recreate a P365 that fits the same footprint as the Sig X Macro Comp while still staying in the same price constraints as if you were to go and buy an X Macro Comp brand new at a store. In this video, we're going to go over all of the pricing details as well as information on how to recreate this build in case you already have an X Macro Comp and want to upgrade it. If you have a Sig P365, the micro one that has a 3.1-inch barrel, and again, you want to recreate all of this, or if you have nothing and you're starting from the ground up, of all the details on the best way to do this and try to save you as much money as I possibly can in the meantime. Starting off here, I want to highlight the parts that we're using for this build. Starting off with the frame, this is the Icarus Air Polymer grip. Icarus is known for their aluminum grips for the Sig 365 and 360 platforms. However, the Air Polymer one is really what piqued my interest, not only because of the price, but also because of the weight. Since I'm carrying this gun, I want it to be as light as possible. Now, if you're going for something that is the flattest shooting 365, you'll definitely want way more weight in the grip than what this provides, but I picked this up on Black Friday for $100, I believe, so it was a fantastic deal. As you can see here, the grip is a little different where it has this cut for your finger. It really helps along with the mag well to push your hand up into the double cut, or the double undercut, excuse me, and it gives you a really nice purchase of the firearm. Another huge feature of this grip is going to be this thumb ledge, and you're able to select if you want it on the right side, the left side, or ambidextrous on both sides. Taking a look at the texture here, you'll see it's kind of like a diamond shape. This is way more tackier than what I expected. I was a big fan of the stock Sig X Macro grip with that like sandpaper texture, but I like this a lot more, especially when your hands get sweaty. It's the perfect amount of grip texture to where it's not uncomfortable when it rubs against your body while still providing you the maximum amount of grip. Overall, I couldn't be happier with this setup here. I also have the TLR7X sub connected here. It just uses the 1913 version with the 1913 adapter, so you don't have to worry about buying any other like tactical development adapters or anything like that. It fits really well on here. Since this is a P365 build, you will need the fire control unit for a 365. You can find these for about $350 brand new. You can also just yank it out of any other 365, which is a really beautiful part of this platform because it's so modular. This is bone stock. There's no frills about it except for that it has the flat trigger. The triggers in these, you can upgrade them, but you're not going to gain a whole lot. I've looked into the M Carbo trigger, but for this somewhat budget build, I just decided to stay with the stock one. One thing to note when doing this build is that if you're doing it from the ground up, or if you're gutting your own 365, I would highly recommend getting one of these receiver retaining pins. These are very easy to lose, and it's always very nice to have an extra one. It also comes with the retainers for them, so I think it comes with two, at least the stock one from Sig does. So even if you lose one of those pins when you're working on your FCU, then you'll always have an extra. So just something to keep in mind. Taking a look at the slide here, this is just a stock 365 X Slide, optics ready, obviously, with the X-ray night sights. You can't really go wrong with any of these. There's not a good or a bad one to buy, especially when you're shopping OEM. Just keep in mind it has to be the non-comped version, the 3.1-inch barrel for it to work with the Ramjet. This also has a stock guide rod and spring out of the 3.1. A lot of the times you can find these for a package pre-owned. Even if you have to buy the barrel, you can always sell that separately later. Otherwise, you can find them for about like $250 completely stripped. Sometimes you can get people to throw in the extra spring and guide rod if you need to, but this is probably one of the harder things to source used, but they can definitely be had. I do want to mention if you want to buy it brand new, Sig usually sells them for about $300 completely stripped, but you'll still need to buy this spring and guide rod, so keep that in mind. Also on here, I have the Defender CCW optic. We'll get into that in a minute on why I like this optic. A lot of people use the EPS carry. I went with this personally for a few different reasons. Again, we'll get to that when we cover the full build once it's completed. The star of the show is going to be the Radian Ramjet. I picked this up on Black Friday for about $300, which is an absolute steal for what you're getting. taking a look inside here, you'll see that it comes with the match grade barrel as well as the compensator. Now, I'm not the first person to cover this Radian Ramjet and Afterburner combo, and I probably won't be the last because of how popular this is. So essentially what it does is it uses a taper screw to attach the compensator to the barrel, which makes taking it down for cleaning very easy, as well as the lack of a threaded barrel to make it 50 states illegal. In the box, you'll also see that you get the star bit that you'll need to install this. All right, we have everything set up here to put together. So we'll start by taking the Icarus precision frame. As you can see, compared to a stock X Macro grip, it's pretty much identical. So same principles apply when installing a fire control unit. Keep in mind when you buy these out of the box, they're set up like this, where the takedown pin or the lever is completely horizontal. And to install this, you'll need to change that. So in order to do it, all you do is slide up on the slide lock and just pull this down. And once you do that, you'll see that this little retention, I don't know what you want to call it, the ledge is holding this piece down. Now this will want to walk out towards you, so keeping a little pressure on that's never a bad idea. You'll want to find the hole for the trigger, slide it in, and kind of work your way from the front to the back. This can be a little tricky, so just take your time, work it back and forth until you feel it drop all the way in. As you can see, I'm having a little bit of problems with it myself, and that pin walked towards me, so we're gonna have to lock it again. But eventually, you'll see this front part drop down in, and you can push the back down. And there we go. Now, another challenge of doing this is getting the pin in. I found that, especially on the Icarus polymer grip, for whatever reason, this pin is a little harder to get in. So essentially, you just gotta take your time. It's just like putting any other kind of pin into a firearm. I would use a soft mallet. Obviously, don't force it. If it really doesn't feel like it wants to go in, then you're just gonna have to pull out the fire control unit, kind of work it around a little bit more and see if you have better luck on the next try. It took me a couple tries, but I did get the pin in, so we're gonna put that down for right now. We're gonna pick up our slide. Now, when you're assembling this, especially if you are buying one brand new, I want you to use these witness marks as places to apply lubrication to when you are first getting the slide. This is ultimately where the barrel kind of rides here to achieve the lockup, and putting a little lube on here as well will be very fruitful for you once you complete the build. These guns are known for being very stiff out of the box, and even after 1,000 rounds, they can still be pretty stiff, or at least stiffer than what you would expect. So being able to do that is going to be really important. We'll just take our barrel here, and you'll want to take the flat part and make sure that's pointed towards that ejection port. Grab it by these pieces. If you've already installed a gun barrel, it's pretty much the same exact principle. Just kind of work it in there, make sure it seats, and you can always check the ejection port as well. Obviously, again, you can see the witness marks of where that rubs. That's completely normal. It's just the tight tolerances. So after that's installed, you will take your guide rod and spring. The fat end goes towards the front, and then you just kind of pinch it until it seats inside that ledge there. All right, so we're gonna take the compensator here, and it really only goes on one way. So you just kind of work it on until it fits the body lines. As you can see, it fits perfectly here. It doesn't actually sit on the slide, but it is very close. It'll wobble back and forth a little bit until you put that taper screw in, which we'll do right now, and it will essentially just find its own spot. So it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to worry about that wobble. I have that star key here. And it says to do this till 15 inch-pounds, so we're definitely going to do that scientifically here until we hear that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, about there. Yeah, that feels like 15 inch-pounds. If you're wondering, it's 15 inch-pounds is usually what you put an Optic to, rough give or take, depending on the gun. So there's that for you if you want a reference. I don't think it makes a huge deal. I would definitely not over tighten this screw because I have no idea if you can get another one or not. Once that's on there, you'll see the whole unit is pretty solid. There should be no wobble at that point. And you should be ready to take your frame after, again, you do that little trick where you slide up on the slide lock and make sure that takedown lever is all the way vertical. Then you'll slide onto the frame as you normally would, pull all the way back, lock it, and then you can flip that takedown lever over, drop the slide, and it is assembled. Obviously go through, make sure you do your tests. So we're gonna rack it, we're gonna pull the trigger, make sure it resets. Beautiful. You'll also see that this is cut for a safety. That is on the way. It did not make it here in time for the build. That's definitely not something that's necessary to do this. A lot of people run these grips without safeties, or any kind of SIG grip without a safety, even if it's cut for it. I forgot to mention that this grip is available with or without a safety cut. I just added it on there just as a little extra measure, but definitely not necessary. I'm not saying one way or another if you should run a safety on your gun. That is completely your own prerogative. Lastly, for the build, obviously, if we're building an X Macro, we have to stay true to the most marketable feature of that firearm, and that is the slimness compared to the amount of ammunition you can carry in the magazine. So we have a stock OEM 17 rounder here. It works perfect with the Icarus grip. There's a little bit of wobble when you don't have it loaded, but once you have rounds in there, the wobble goes away. I've seen some people have problems with that, and it should definitely not wobble. When I have this fully loaded, there's really nothing that moves. The stock base plates work fine with this magwell, so you don't have to worry about that, but you can buy different base plates if you want to. Radian makes some really cool ones that I want to pick up eventually, but I just don't really, again, want to spend the money on this kind of budget constrained build. But yeah, works perfectly. Lockback works fine. Always want to check that, but yeah. This also gives you an opportunity to throw some lube on the guide rod itself here, just to make sure that's well oiled. Spread some more on the barrel, and dab a little bit on the chamber. You can pull the mag out, and just a little bit on the feed ramp I found helps a lot, especially if you're shooting really cheap ammo. But yeah, that's the build. Now that we have everything together here, we can get into the shooting portion, because I actually got to take this to the range, run it through the paces with a few different ammo types, and I can give a pretty decent review, or at least first impressions of the build. Getting back from the range here, I got a really great first impression of this gun, enough to where I can at least speak upon it. So I ran about 150, 200 rounds through this setup, varying from 115 grain, 124 grain, some defensive ammo, plus P, pretty much anything you would run on a normal basis. And I have to say that I'm just super impressed with this Radian Ramjet Afterburner combo. I cannot believe how soft this thing shoots for the size. I see a lot of reviews on this. It's the new hot thing in the firearm industry, and you just never know if it's all hype or, if it's actually worth it. But I see why they can charge such a price for this, because it really does work. The best way I can explain it is that it makes 124 plus P feel like you're just shooting normal 115 grain out of an X Macro Comp that is completely stock. The X Macro Comp compensator does work. it just doesn't do as much as this for sure. It's just the nature of the design, but not saying that the X Macro is a bad firearm at all. I'm just saying that this with the Radian Ramjet is definitely better. I'll be the first to tell you that my grip is not perfect and it can use a lot of improvement, and that's something I want to keep working on as I make content as well as just going out and shooting for my own satisfaction. But between the Ramjet and the Icarus Air Polymer grip, this gun essentially forces you to hold it correctly because the grip will just naturally move your hand back into where it's supposed to be. And the soft recoil from the Ramjet just makes it an absolute blast to shoot. Definitely makes me feel like I'm a better shooter than what I am, especially with a red dot where the muzzle rise is just, it's definitely there. It's not going to get rid of all of it, but what it does is the gun returns just exactly where I had the dot before, and it returns quick. So it allows me to shoot faster follow-up shots, and I really enjoy that. The reason I like this red dot so much is not just because of the knurling, but I also appreciate how recessed the glass is inside here. This just helps with stuff coming out of the ejection port, all that junk that eventually will cake up the front of your optic. It's going to happen to any red dot, but having it recessed at this angle definitely helps a little bit. I also love the window size on the Vortex Defender CCW. The window size itself is definitely bigger than the EPS carry and pretty much anything else in this RMSC footprint class. You can definitely tell with the vertical height of the window on how tall it is compared to other optics. It's kind of hard to see on camera, but if you hold them side by side, it's a noticeable difference. I care more about the optic being taller because I want to be able to keep that dot inside that window under recoil when the muzzle is rising, and this helps me do it. But I highly recommend, if you're going to go buy an optic, definitely go try it out at any store you possibly can find it at. They usually have it on demo guns where you can just lift it up and point. You can go from like a low ready to present and just see if the dot is just naturally kind of falling within your eye line. For me, the Vortex Defender does that, but I also have a Hollow Sun on a lot of other guns. And it's really just what works for you in the purpose that you're trying to fulfill. Ultimately, do I think these upgrades are worth it, especially over the X Macro? Absolutely. 100% for the money that you're spending on this. Not only are you getting a lot of different creature comforts like this thumb ledge as well as the magwell, but you're also getting a gun that performs much better. And we're in an age where we can buy performance on shooting, which is kind of a weird thing to think about, but this makes up for a lot of lack of skill that I have, and I'm perfectly fine to admit that. I think that it's a fantastic deal for what you're getting, and it's a platform that I can keep improving on. So yeah, absolutely. I think that this is great for anyone, whether you're a beginner starting out and you want the best SIG you can buy, nothing wrong with that. I think that this is a great platform to learn on, and for a more experienced shooter, then this is just gonna run like a scalded dog. I mean, like, it's just gonna be ridiculous. Ultimately, first impressions, this is worth it. I love it. I know I may get some questions about holster fitment, and I wish I had different holsters to show you guys. This one is a Mechanitech, and it's actually from Tactical Development. Prior to having this frame, I had the Tactical Development Pro Ledge on the TLR7. So it had like this extended thumb ledge that you can get. So this holster is actually molded for it. As you can see, there's quite a big bulge that you don't really feel when you're carrying it, but it's definitely there. It's a little hard to show on camera, but if you see this ledge here, when you put it in the holster, it's actually sitting lower than where this is cut to. So it fits no problem, but you might want to check on that before you buy a holster if you're getting this frame. QVO Tactical makes insanely good holsters, and I have one on order, but I bought that on Black Friday as well, along with just like probably thousands of other people. So it'll take a little bit to get that built. So I'll definitely review it once it comes in, but just make sure when you're buying a holster for this setup that it will work with the Icarus Air Polymer grip. You can call the manufacturer or just look online. These grips are popular enough that a lot of places either make a grip that is specific for this frame, or it just works from the get-go. I know that the Tier 1 concealed, at least the Axis Elite, does allow this to work with no modification as long as you're running the light. As you can see, the light is definitely wider than the ledge, and a lot of the indexing points that the holsters use for retention are on the light itself. So not really something that I'm too concerned about for you guys, but just something to keep in mind. Now let's get into how to build this yourself. So if you're starting off from just nothing, what you're gonna wanna do is buy a fire control unit. Those are about $350. So you'll go through, purchase that. You will buy the Icarus frame as well as a stock 3.1-inch slide and then the Ramjet kit. So essentially that's the cheapest way to do it, unless you're gonna find a smoking deal on a Micro 365 used. That's about the cheapest way to do it, personally, in my experience. But if it's a little harder to find the FCU where you live, then you'll definitely want to just buy that Micro 365. If you have the Micro 365 and you want to build up to this, essentially all you need is a different grip module and the Ramjet kit. You can sell your barrel as well as that grip module, so you can recoup a little bit of money that way. Or if you want to just convert your X Macro, which is what I did, you'll sell pretty much everything. So you will sell your frame, you will sell your slide and barrel, as well as the guide rod spring. You can also find someone to trade it with, possibly, if they're looking to build up an X Macro, just completely OEM style from the Micro. That would be your best case scenario. Otherwise, you'll have to go through, pretty much sell all your parts, and you pretty much break even though. So you can get about $350-ish for your slide, barrel, and guide rod and spring, as long as it's the compensated version, which is really nice. And then you can get about $75 for the grip module. I'm keeping mine because I want to do some things with changing up the stippling on here. But it's not too hard to get rid of those parts. A lot of people want them. There's a big demand for it. So you'll definitely have no problem getting rid of those. Breaking down the total cost of this build, we're looking at $100 for the Icarus Air Polymer grip on Black Friday. Otherwise, they can be had for about $130. You're going to be looking at about $350 for the fire control unit. There's not a whole lot of ways around that. You can find one used, but generally speaking, they're always $350. The slide itself is about $275. We'll say $300 just to make it a little bit easier. You can find them a little cheaper used, especially if you can get that guide rod spring thrown in for about the $300 price range. That's going to be huge towards the total budget. And then finally, the Radian Ramjet. The most expensive part is going to be about $300 on Black Friday for what I got it for. Obviously, they're a lot more otherwise. You'll pay upwards of $370 for one, unless you can find it used. But at least for Black Friday, that helped us get it down into that budget. A stock X Macro costs anywhere from $800 to $900, so we're coming in there really comparatively here. Obviously, again, the light and the red dot are not included, unless you want to compare it to the Sig, which comes with that Romeo sight. I can't remember how much it cost. I think it was like $1,100 or $1,200. So if we're including that, then yeah, we're pretty close with the light and the red dot. And I think this red dot is far superior to the Sig, but that's all personal preference. Thank you so much, guys, for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them down below. Drop a like, subscribe, and let me know what you want to see next time.